Welcome to Email Deliverability Workshop, which is more like a conversation, more like a discussion today, where we will help you understand how to make your messages reach the inbox. I hope you are excited as I am and ready to absorb everything we have prepared for you today. My name is Kate, and I'll be your host today. I have two guests joining me as speakers, Heather and Sadie. They're both customer success managers here at Omnisend, and they have a couple of tips and deliverability tricks to share with you today. So ladies, go ahead and welcome our audience.
Hey guys, I'm Heather, and as Kate said, I'm a customer success manager here at Omnisend. We're very excited to talk to you today about something that comes up very often as we're working with clients. Let's definitely jump into this. Sadie, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So lovely to meet you guys. Super excited, again, like Heather said, to talk a little bit about deliverability. Obviously, this is a huge conversation to have, and there's so many aspects that go into it. So hopefully we can make it a little bit easier to digest for you guys. But yeah, I'm Sadie. I've been with Omnisend for actually almost 3 years now and have had many deliverability conversations. So yeah, super excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. We also have other experts with us behind the scene answering your questions in the Q&A tab. So please make sure if you have any questions, ask them in the Q&A tab right below next to the chat. Don't ask them in the chat. So our team would, notice your question and give you the best answer. Right, before we move on to the main part, let me briefly go through our agenda. So we took 6 most asked questions on deliverability, and we are ready to answer those live in our discussion. So those are going to be, what is deliverability and why is it important? What is shared and custom domains? What is the war map and how do I not mess it up? Signs of good and poor deliverability, best practices, and what's up with Gmail. By the end of the discussion, we will have a Q&A session where Heather and Sadie will answer the best questions out loud that you ask in the Q&A. And I'm not going to spoil anything else, but a couple of more things. Don't worry, the workshop is going to be recorded and you will receive it in a couple of days in your email inbox together with a Q&A one-pager that will have your questions answered and more useful resources on deliverability. Also, you can always find all the recorded workshops that we had before on our YouTube channel. And the last thing is survey. When you will leave the workshop, there's going to be a short survey, and we will really appreciate that if you could spare some minutes and let us know how we are doing and what other topics you would be interested in for us to, discuss and educate you. Right. I think that's it. That's all you need to know. Now, Heather, Sadie, I hope you're ready because it's time. So tell us, what is deliverability and why is it important to take care of it?
Yeah, so I'll start. So deliverability, what is deliverability? I'll answer the easiest question for today, right? Quick funny story. I was trying to explain all of this to one of my brothers this morning on the way to work. So I'll just explain it to you guys this way. So what is deliverability? The ability to get an email where it needs to go, right? As simple as it gets, so how do I get my email where I want it to go? And if you're having trouble with deliverability or you're just trying to understand how to improve it, that's definitely, we're going to get into that today and all the nuances in that. But I think the main takeaway is going to be you are in control. You have the ability to look at the data and make decisions and try new strategies to improve or just build upon your already good deliverability. So I want you guys to just remember, all today is just to teach you guys that this is something you can work with. This is something that you can change. This is something that is in your wheelhouse to tackle for sure. And then Sadie, if you want to talk next about why it is definitely important to pay attention to.
Yeah, so I'm sure that I'm probably talking to a lot of e-commerce brands right now. And so why is it important to get to the inbox? It's pretty simple. Obviously, we want our subscribers to receive the emails that you have worked so hard on. And if we don't have great deliverability, then you're going to end up in the spam folder. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how often I actually check my spam folder. It's every few weeks. Actually, Kate, I think we do have a poll on which choices actually have the best impact on your email deliverability. But
Right.
yeah, so we want to obviously get to the inbox and see those sales from our hard work and building those emails. But if you want to go ahead and pull up that poll.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be interesting to know what is the main impact that what impacts your deliverability the most. So let me just launch that poll. You'll see that small pop-up on your screen. So just answer the right option that fits your situation. Let's just give it a couple of seconds while we're waiting, while people are voting. Sadie, Heather, do you have your top impact? Like, what do you think impacts the most your deliverability?
Heather, you want to go first?
Yeah. So, looking at this, there could be some definitely I don't knows in the very beginning of your email marketing journey, and it's very easy to blame one thing fully and completely, and then not the other. Especially if you read a certain article or your boss says it's so, right? But as I've been in this email marketing business with Omnisend for a few years now. We've seen that it's never just one thing. It always seems to be a collection of things, and which is kind of a good thing because that you have some wiggle room in either direction for a lot of these topics. So the number one reason that I see is not the choice in ESP. As much as I would like to say that if you come to Omnisend, you'll have the best deliverability in the world. Of course, you want to say that about your own company that you work for, but it really comes down to your sending strategy and how are you using the tool that you bought into. Are you using it to the best of your ability, or are you just rolling the dice? Sadie, did you want to go ahead and add on to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it perfectly. I do think one thing that is really important as well is the quality of your contact list. That is huge whenever we're talking about deliverability. If we have a great contact list of people who have subscribed to us, then you should have really no problems with deliverability. But I think that's probably the biggest impact. But it's like you said, your sending strategy. It all comes down to that.
All right. So I have answers. I have results to our first poll, and I'm not sure if I expected to see these numbers, but let me share the results so everybody sees that. So 52% don't even know what impacts their email deliverability. And like 40% know that it's their sending strategy, and only 8% know that it's their ESP choice. So for those 52%, for sure you will learn more today. Sadie and Heather will, point to the right direction to see what actually affects your deliverability. I think we can move on to the next question, right? To the next topic.
All right, so I'll jump in here. So our next topic is custom domain versus shared domain. I would say 99% of the time, okay, maybe more like 80, but like it's still an awful lot when I'm on a first time call with a customer and this topic comes up. Many times I get the response of, please explain this to me. I'm not sure the difference between the two. Why would I want one versus the other? Sometimes every once in a while I'll get, we definitely want, this one because we read somewhere that that's going to give us better deliverability. That's a very loaded topic in general. And again, it comes down to your sending strategy and where your company is growth wise. If you're very new to email marketing, your sending strategy isn't quite where you're thinking it will be in a few months. A shared domain is like a really safe place for you to be on. So when you jump on a typical ESP, you come to Omnisend and you maybe send out your first email. Maybe you're just sending it for like a test email to your internal colleagues. There's 10 of you on that segment that you made. You would be technically sending from the shared domain. And Kate, if you want to go ahead and share, we have a really great support article on this that has a lot of visuals to give you a really base idea of like what the shared domain will really look like. to the person receiving that email. It's a shared domain is going to be a place where you're sending with other, in our case, Omnisend users, and it's going to be sent on behalf of us. It'll say, your brand name on behalf of Omnisend, right? Where a custom domain, if you went through the process of setting that up, it's going to look a little more like you're sending it on behalf of yourself, right? So that would be like what your customers would see if they looked that far. I don't know about you. I don't really go into the weeds when I look at any brands that end up in my inbox. I don't really look up like the translation and all of the details of the email to see exactly where it was sent to. It's just not a practice I do personally. I just go, oh, it's a good sale and I need jeans for my daughter, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this and click through and buy that pair. But, where it might bother some people to have that on behalf of, and it looks like from somebody else. So it's just more of a preference rather than, a necessity. But on the technical side of things, being on a custom domain can give you more control over your deliverability. So you would only be sending from your own space. Whereas a shared is what it sounds like. It's shared space. So a custom domain is you're on your own, and a shared space is with your other senders. So that shared space is like a shared playground where you have other kids looking out for you and other kids playing on the playground and making it like a safe, happy place. Where if you're on your own island, it can get a little bit lonely and unstable if you're not doing the best thing for yourself because you are the only person there, right? So it just wherever your comfort level is. Wherever your brand growth is, that's kind of where you want to decide one versus the other. We're going to have all the pros and cons and a follow-up documentation for you guys after this webinar. So don't get stressed out about writing down all these bullet points of one versus the other. We'll definitely have that prepared for you later. So yeah, if you check out that link, you'll be able to see what it looks like and then the differences. And the last little bit I always like to point out is the custom domain is very easy to send from, right? You jump on the ESP, you load your list, and as long as we'll get to this in a little bit, but as long as it's small enough, you can send an email right away. No problems with your shared domain, right? Whereas the custom domain, it takes a few extra steps to set that up. You're going to have to reach into your DNS settings. If you're not very technical, you're going to have to pull in another team member to do all these things for you. If you're familiar with it, it will take 15 minutes. If you're not familiar, it could take an hour. Just kind of trying to figure out how to navigate it, right? So you just keep that in mind. If this is something that you want to put on your list of things to check out later, just know it's going to take a couple of minutes to investigate it and set it up. But yeah, definitely if you're using Omnisend, which I hope all of you guys are today listening in, lean heavily on our wonderful support team with that setup doc. If you're exploring one route or the other, they do a phenomenal job at helping our customers getting set up on the custom domain or the shared domain. Sadie, did I leave anything out on that?
No, I think you explained it really well, but I will add that note that as long as you're using best practices, and again, you have that quality list that I was mentioning earlier, you can actually have better deliverability on a custom domain versus a shared domain. Again, because you're not sharing that space with many of our other customers who, maybe don't use all the best practices. But yeah, you definitely have a little bit more control, as Heather was saying in the beginning, with that custom domain, but just note that it is yours and you want to build that good reputation with ISPs. And so if you don't follow best practices, you buy a list off the internet, which please nobody ever do. But again, as long as you use best practices, that custom domain, you can actually have better deliverability versus a shared.
You know what? I'm also thinking, what if someone from our audience doesn't know where to actually, they don't even know if they are on the shared domain or custom domain, and they don't even know where to look. Maybe let's just quickly, share it and show how where to find it inside Omnisend.
Great point.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. This is the store settings that you can find right over here, store settings, and very, very easy to find it. We have a tab Sender's Domain here. You just click here and it will tell you if your campaigns and automations are on the shared domain, as it says for my store, or if it's a custom domain. Very easy. When you know it, you will know and proceed with every steps that Sadie and Heather just shared.
Yeah.
All right.
And one more thing I wanted to add while you're in here, just kind of jogged my memory. So you could go through the process of setting this up. And one thing I see very, very often is the SPF records seem to be the tricky little ones in this step. Now you might be like, SPF, what is that? Like, you're talking about sunscreen. So if once you're familiar with this, you'll understand what those are. But it just in a general sense, if anything is going to give you a problem, it's going to be that little section there. And we have this third-party tool that we like to use to check out what's going on and why it's not verifying. So the DKIM might be green, it'll say verified, and you'll be good to go with there. But the SPF might turn out, I think, yellow or yellowy orange or something, and it seems like it's yelling at you that it's not verifying. And we'll share that link too to check it. Typically, what ends up happening is you have too many SPF records on hand, and you have to condense it to one line. And it's really just that simple. It's just like copy, paste, separate by, I think, a colon, and then hit verify, and it should be good to go. But yeah, we'll definitely share that resource with you guys as well if you wanted to check that route out.
All right. I think we're ready to move on to the next question, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think it's warm-up plan, the warm-up process overall. So we are now on let's say we're now on the custom domain. So what do we do next?
Yeah, so you might be sending on Omnisend right now on a shared domain and might be interested in signing a custom domain now that you're kind of learning about it. Note that if you do ever change your domain settings, that you have to go through a warm-up process. And basically what this warm-up process does is introduce yourself as a new sender to ISPs, internet service providers, to basically tell them that you're a really great sender, that you're a quality sender. So the way that we do that is through a warm-up process. And what a warm-up process typically looks like is small segments of your list, gradually sent over time to all your subscribers. So I do have a screenshot there. We actually have a warm-up plan within Omnisend itself. So I am going to go share my screen very quickly.
Sadie, maybe before you share your screen, I wonder maybe we should ask our audience if they ever had done that warm up and if they even know what it is, right?
Right.
So let's just launch it, and you guys just let us know if you ever done a warm up, yes or no, or maybe you don't even know what it is. And if you don't, Sadie is ready to tell you what it is and what's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Most of the time, whenever I'm onboarding my clients, I ask them what a warm up is. Have they ever heard of it? Typically, the answer is no. So this is definitely a portion of education that I like to preach about. But again, you're slowly introducing yourself to ISPs. What you're wanting to do is build a good reputation. And Heather actually has a really good analogy that she uses, and I'll let her tell her story because she's just so good at telling stories.
All right. So to describe what a warm-up is and how it functions, the analogy that I give is, say you go to a diner every Sunday for brunch with your favorite girlfriends, like who doesn't love brunch, right? But it's like a routine, you and that girl, every single Sunday. After a couple Sundays in a row, typically a small diner, small restaurant is going to start to familiarize themselves with you. And they might just be like, you know what? We love you guys. Just come on in and find that seat that you guys always get by the window, right? So you have a reputation built. They're comfortable with you coming and going, and you even so much as get your order right every single time because you always get the same thing. So maybe on the 10th Sunday in a row, you guys go to the same diner and you show up with 2 more friends or 5 more friends. Okay, so now the diner's like, okay, hold on a second, we need a bigger table, no problem, but you might just have to wait a second, no big deal. And they move you guys to a different location in the restaurant, right? So maybe on the 11th Sunday, you guys show up and you have 50,000 more friends with you. Okay, so the restaurant is going to freak out. They're going to be like, no, absolutely not. They're going to block you, and that's exactly what's going to happen in the digital aspect of this analogy. You will get blocked. And if you don't get blocked, there's a good chance that half of your friends aren't going to be allowed in. They'll be bounced back, right? So we don't want that. We want to make sure that everyone gets into the restaurant that they're supposed to be going to. Everyone gets fed. So it's always a good idea idea to slowly ramp up. And that gives the restaurant time to staff up and to, make sure that they put the addition on the back to host all of your guests that you're bringing with you. So just keep that in mind. The warm-up plan functions the same way. You're just slowly building that good reputation. You want it to make sure that you and your immediate best friend is seen as a good customer, but then so all of your other friends, because you have good taste. So why wouldn't the rest of your friends be following that good reputation, right? So go ahead, Sadie, and take it back.
Yeah. Imagine having 50,000 friends.
I have the results. So let's quickly look at them and then you will proceed. So not bad. 27% have done that warm up, but the rest either didn't or didn't even know what it is. So I think it's a good opportunity to let them know what it is and what's the best way.
Perfect. Awesome. So if you, again, are choosing to go to a custom domain now that you know what it is, or maybe you're just now starting to send on Omnisend, it's always really good to do a warm-up plan. And I would say if you have more than 5,000 contacts, a warm-up plan is not going to be a bad idea. If you have less than that, then you might be safe. But if you wanted to do like a mini warm-up, then that's always great as well. So I'm actually going to show you a screenshot of what this warm-up plan looks like actually in Omnisend. So we will build this warm-up plan for you in your app. So once you go to your reports tab, you have a deliverability tab. Once you get into that deliverability tab, you will see the sender's warm up. So this is very similar to what it's going to look like. And this is going to be dependent on your audience. You'll notice that here in some of these steps, we have lots of subscribers. So if you're on that smaller side, then you're not going to see this many. Something to note as well, if you don't have over 20,000 subscribers on Omnisend, then we cannot build this warm-up plan, but this is something, again, you can just break your audience into and slowly grow over time. It's very simple. But yeah, just kind of wanted to share a screenshot of what that looks like. And I'm going to stop sharing now. Perfect. All right. Yeah, Heather, did I miss anything else on warm-up plan? I know this is a huge conversation, a huge topic. So obviously want to make it as simple as possible, but give every detail that I can.
Yeah, I think you summed up everything perfectly. The only thing I can think of is that in the documentation we'll share with you guys afterwards, we'll drop in some of the rates to look for to spot problems in your warm up. So at any time, your warm up could start to not have the best results, and we want to have the ability to judge the performance. So that's, we have key metrics that we follow, and we're happy to share them with you guys to know what to look out for, when to pause the warm-up plan, or when to say, this is awesome, I'm going to keep going, right?
Yep. All right, we're done with the warm-up. So I wonder, how do we even know that our deliverability is bad or good? So what would be the signs of that poor or good deliverability?
Yeah, so that is, there's a bunch of best practices around that. We have a great blog article that is written around a lot of the best practices and steps. If you ever need some reading material, definitely check out a lot of our marketing material. We have a huge selection of blog posts. Our marketing team puts together these wonderful, summaries of all of the data you could ever want, and puts that in really great readable material for you, so you can see what to check out first and what you can adjust next. But just to kind of summarize that, best practices, one of the first things that I always try to have a deep conversation with my clients is about their sending cadence. This is something that, if you're seeing really good results, meaning good click rates, good open rates, and good sales, your sending cadence can be a little bit more frequent, right? If you're starting to see results that are not ideal, this is a good time to revisit how often am I sending and to whom am I sending it to? So your campaign calendar, if you don't have one, this would be a great time to create some sort of structure for you and your team to follow. I always say that like if you don't know how often to send and you're kind of flexible on that, shoot for twice a week. 2 to 3 times a week seems to be a really good sweet spot for a lot of brands, and that gives you the wiggle room to hit your larger group of your audience. The ones that are that need to hear the big announcement of the week at least once a week, right? And then the second group of the week could be something like your more VIP customers, the ones that are engaging a little bit more. It's always a good idea to vary your sending size, or I should say your list of who you send it to. I always like to give the analogy of like, we all know what Target is, right? Big box store. You sign up for Target, and do you really want every single ad they ever had to send to you? Or would you rather have something tailored to the experience? Think about how many products are at that store or any big box store. I have a child. It's been a very long time since she's been in diapers, right? I do not want diaper ads, but I do love Target, right? So I want to go there for her clothes that are her size and where we are in this stage of life. So I don't want emails every single day from the same exact store, which I love, because eventually I'm going to unsubscribe because that gets super noisy. So use the data to your advantage. Start to pick that apart, saying, okay, who clicked on this category or who purchased recently from this category? Send them that material, right? Create that personalized experience for your customers, and think about how you can drop that into the days of the week that you're sending. So that sending cadence, it also gives your customers a little bit of breathing room. There's that saying that absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So if you give somebody a little bit of a break, when you do send them an email, maybe later on in the month, if they're in that like really inactive group, they'll be like, oh, I haven't heard anything from this brand for a while. I wonder if it's a good sale. And they have a higher probability of clicking on it. And that's really, really good for your sender reputation. So, the step before, we were just talking about that warm-up plan. You did all this hard work to warm yourself up and give yourself that good inbox placement. Don't ruin it by over emailing. Start to use that data from the warm-up plan and start to build across those dynamic segments. In your a couple of weeks ago, we did a workshop where we were talking about segmentation. Definitely revisit that, and it'll definitely give you some more information on how to use segments to your advantage. Sadie, do you want to go ahead and jump in here? I feel like I just talked for a really long time, and I don't know if I even covered everything or just rambled.
Yeah, no, I mean, kind of going back to what you were saying about having a consistent cadence, this is so key. I actually had a client before who was only sending during the winter months because they only offered products that were typically bought in the winter time. And, they did see a spike in their spam reports whenever they would start sending in the summer because they were, or whenever they started sending in the winter time because they weren't sending in the summertime. You want to make sure to keep that cadence. If you don't keep that cadence, then your subscribers are not going to be familiar. I can barely remember what I ate for dinner last night. I'm not going to remember if I subscribed to your newsletter 3 months ago. So just keep that cadence, but also make sure that you're sending quality emails. Don't just send to be sending, but there's so many great resources out there on like what to send, who to send to, and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, and then two, some people will ask, what should I send? Is there any specifics as far as image to text ratio when it comes to email? I think that depends on who you're sending to. If your list is very, if they love that type of content, they're very engaged with that type of content, which is all image based, then that's perfectly fine. But know your audience, understand who your audience is and what they're interested in. And then again, like Heather said, use segmentation in Omnisend. There's so many different segments that you can create. Sometimes I get a little overwhelmed when I'm in Omnisend because there are so many filters that you can use to create a very specific segment of customers. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Kind of tricky. Me and Sadie, we've been doing this for so long, we kind of nerd out sometimes. We forget where we are. It's probably good that we're in the roles that we're in. So, any of you folks out there want a customer success manager at Omnisend, just make sure you let us know, and we'll tell you how to get to that point, because we would love to have you and have these deeper discussions and deep dives and look into your accounts and help you strategize together, because this is where our hearts are for sure, if you can't tell today. So one of the polls I think we might have, I think it's a really good one to try out next. And Kate, I think I jumped ahead. So why don't you take it back from me and I'll reel it in a little bit.
That was really smooth transition from the, science to the best practices. So let's, there's one question that we also want to ask you about what metrics do you look at? So if you could tell us, and let me first start that poll before, let me click that button. Okay, so if you could tell us what is the most important metric you pay attention to when you're judging the performance of your last email campaign. Do you look at the open rate? Do you look at the click rate? Is it sales that matter, or you don't really know? Since we jumped into the next topic, is there anything else, any other practices that our customers or audience could do?
Let's see. Actually, you know what? I do have a screenshot that I have as well, and I can show after the polls. And it's directly related to this question too. Like, what are some of the signs in my Omnisend account that would tell me that I'm having issues with deliverability? I had one client, unfortunately, have their deliverability tank in the Black Friday, Cyber Monday holiday, and that is the absolute worst time to have that deliverability tank. So we'll talk about Gmail specifically here in just a couple of minutes, but there are some tools that you can use, especially if you're on a custom domain, to understand where you're at deliverability wise. And again, that's something that we'll discuss. But once we're done with the poll, I can kind of show you what that looks like.
I think we're done. Let me end the poll because almost everybody answered. So here are the results. Okay, so click rate, lids in this, so 43%, the most important metric for them is click rate, then open rate, and then sales, and 4% don't really know. They don't know which metric is most important. So what do you think?
Interesting.
You're surprised that more people pay attention to click rate?
I'm not honestly too surprised. I think especially since we're in that post iOS 15 era, we're seeing more attention being paid to that click rate. I don't like to use open rate as a success metric, but I do like to use it in relation to deliverability. If I see that I'm typically getting above 30-40% open rate, and then all of a sudden I'm at 10% open rate, then that's a pretty good indicator that there's something wrong. There's something that's not going right. Your subscribers who were consistently opening your emails are no longer doing so. And that's actually exactly what I have in my example here. Just one second. Let's see. I'll share my screen again. So again, this is one of my clients that unfortunately had some issues right around Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So note, this is also pre-iOS 15, so you'll notice that some of these open rates are significantly lower than probably what you're seeing, but they were consistently getting around that 20% open rate. Their click rates hovering right around that 1% and above that 1%, especially in regards to promotional emails. And then they were not using best practices. Instead, they were sending to all of their contacts all of the time. And Gmail, well, again, we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail here in a minute, but they're very specific and they're very strict when it comes to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, also year round, but especially during that time. So we actually saw that their open rates, you can see here, dropped to hovering around that 2.5%. So this was a major red flag, and we knew that something was going wrong in this case. So we decided to start from scratch. We ended up signing another custom domain, going through that warm-up process. And now they're great. They're fantastic. But yeah, they were seeing a number of red flags, including that open rate dropping, that click rate dropping, and then they also saw their sales dissipate in one of their most busy seasons. So I would actually say in the poll that this is not a tricky question, but I would say that all of the above are key indicators of deliverability. But okay, stopping sharing my screen. But yeah, any thoughts, Heather?
Yeah, so that was great. I don't have too many topics to cover that other than what you said. I think more specifically, like if you're looking for those like ideal numbers, we'll definitely add this into our docs afterwards. But open rates used to be like if you had a 15 to 20%, or sorry, 10 to 15 open rate. That was good. That was an average email. What you were doing was working. Now, because of those inflated numbers, all of the Apple products are marking all of the emails as open. So it's kind of inflated and you don't really know if it's a good or bad. So we always say like, 20% above, and above, that would be something that's a good open rate. But the click rates, 2 to 5% is an average click rate, but that's very industry specific. Sadie and I were just talking about this, and she brought up the topic of furniture companies. You might not get a whole lot of action on the emails, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the email wasn't engaged with in other ways. If it was open, people are just perusing. So it just depends on your industry, what you're used to seeing with that industry. So just keep that in mind. But if you're looking for some sort of range, 2 to 5% click rate is a good starting point. And then sales, of course, we want to see sales. We're in e-commerce, right? So it's like if you have sales, you're good. If you have lots of sales, the email is really good, right? So use all of those and kind of create some judgment based off of all of those metrics, not just one or the other. Yeah. And if you're using Omnisend and you are on our pro plan, definitely check out our advanced reporting page. There is a section at the very bottom that we like to check out to look for signs of deliverability with one specific domain, or maybe two. It's not a perfect science, but it's definitely some place that you have control over taking a peek at what is really happening with one particular area. So you would go to your advanced reporting and scroll to the very, very bottom and let it load. Sometimes it takes like a couple seconds for it to calculate all of that. And then it'll say, your Gmail open rate, and your Hotmail and your all the others and things like that. If there ever is an issue with one that looks very, very questionable, definitely lean on our deliverability team. You can reach them basically through our support team. You can always say like, hey, I noticed that my Gmail open rates don't look so good based off of my advanced reporting. What can I do? Or do you see any issues that I should know about? And sometimes they can pull up some more information for you that would be helpful. And then there's also the warm-up plan. So you can actually isolate your Gmail domains or your Hotmail domain from your entire list and just warm that chunk up over the next couple of days to a couple of weeks, depending on how big that segment is. So there's always a way to fix things should something go south. Just know it is in your power to do that.
Right. So we can go to the last part, right? Sadie, do you have anything to add about the Gmail? Like, what's up with Gmail? Why is that, as we would say, why is it a pain in the butt, right?
No, exactly.
Why is it so complicated?
So I think one of the reasons why we notice Gmail more is because the majority of your list is typically going to be those Gmail emails. So whenever we see any sort of drop in engagement, especially with Gmail, it's going to be the most obvious. We're going to notice it a lot more. And Gmail and other ISPs have specific algorithms to make sure that their customers are receiving quality emails. So we also have to keep in mind, yes, we're all businesses, but so is Gmail and Yahoo and all of these other ISPs. And so they want to do what's best for their customers, which is us. We're the end users there. So these algorithms are made to make sure that whoever is sending emails are quality senders and their Gmail's customers are happy with the service that they're receiving from Gmail. So just keep that in mind. I know sometimes we kind of think of ISPs as the bad guy, but again, they're businesses and they're wanting to do whatever is best for their customers. One thing that I really like to use, and I always suggest my clients using, is Google's Postmaster tool. If you're on a custom domain, you can actually monitor it yourself, your deliverability, whether it's good, great, bad. If you need some work, then that Postmaster tool will definitely help you gauge your deliverability. And then two, if you don't have a customer success manager, or you do have a customer success manager, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into our accounts every single time or every single day and monitor their deliverability, their open rates, their click rates, their sales attributed. So just keep in mind that you do have control and you can use that Postmaster tool to kind of gauge where you're at deliverability wise. And yeah, I mean, that Postmaster tool is definitely a lot of help. Perfect. Heather, you want to add anything when it comes to Gmail? I know you're very passionate about this one as well.
No, I think that's great. That really sums it up. It's just the tricky one, out of all of them. And I would see Hotmail too, but like not really many people use Hotmail much anymore, but Gmail's, it just does seem to be the bulk of our lists these days. So it tends to be the problem child. And takes a little bit longer to warm up sometimes too. I've had, 2 or 3 accounts that I've worked with where we did the full warm up plan and Gmail just couldn't get it together on that warm up plan. So we had to do a secondary warm up plan for just the Gmail accounts. And it sometimes these things happen. It just takes a little bit longer for whatever reason. I feel like 2-3 years ago, this wasn't the case. And it just seems to be getting a little trickier these days. I've even heard something as crazy as like Gmail takes 90 days to get used to you, which is bonkers. But I don't know that I've ever seen 90 days be a true thing, at least from my experience. But if anybody listening today, if you've experienced that, where it took almost 3 months for you guys to get good Gmail open rates, just know you're not alone. And that is a industry stat that I've heard through our deliverability team's research. But yeah, definitely Gmail's tricky.
And then one more thing to know, as I was mentioning earlier, Gmail especially is very strict around Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind. Use segmentation, send to your most engaged audience. And sometimes I actually like to suggest that, if you're sending 2 email campaigns a week, like you were mentioning earlier, Heather, send that very first campaign to all your contacts, and then the second campaign to your most engaged contacts. That way, you have a really good balance. And instead of sending to all of your contacts all of the time, you do have the space to, better your deliverability because you're being a little bit more strategic with your sending.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I always like to give the analogy with segmentation of think about, if you live in a neighborhood, you have neighbors on either side of you, and then you have neighbors down the street. And then if you live in one of those like cookie cutter developments, which, it happens sometimes. I used to be one, you have like really close houses, and then you have houses that are exactly the same on the other side, right? So you're all together, you're all in it, you signed up to be there, right? Your best neighbors are typically the ones closest to you because you've met them, and you see them often, and they're like, hey, how are the kids? And oh, your lawn's looking great, and what are you guys doing on Saturday? You want to come over for a barbecue? You tell them a lot and they tell you a lot. You have that good relationship. And then you have your neighbors down the street a little bit where you only see them when you're driving by. So it's just one of those friendly, like, you might tell them that you're going to be out of town next week, but you should catch up the next week after that. But it's just mostly like important things, right? And you have neighbors on the other side of the neighborhood that they only need to know something when the house is on fire, right? Like if your house is on fire, it's like everybody don't come down that block, right? So think about your list that way too. If it's super important, tell everybody, tell the whole neighborhood, right? You have that list. You spent so much time gathering it and so much resources, curating it and taking care of it all of these years. So we're not saying don't email your list if you want good deliverability. We're just saying be very smart about what you say to everybody. What do you stand on the rooftop saying? And what do you just whisper to your closest neighbors? And that should really help your deliverability over time.
Yeah. I love all of your analogies.
All right, that was our last most asked questions. So we went through all of them, 6 questions. Let's just quickly sum it up, right? What we just, discussed, and yeah, move to the Q&A because there's a lot of questions ready to be answered.
Awesome. So yeah, just to kind of sum up, number one thing, your deliverability is in your control. I know that we've talked about a lot of different specifics today, but it truly is. As long as you're using best practices, you have that quality list, then your deliverability really can be in your control. And then obviously it's very important because, we want all of our emails to land in the inbox. We never want to land in the spam folder. So yeah, deliverability is definitely in your control.
Heather, would you like to add anything else to this?
Yeah, sorry. I've been trying to mute myself in between because of the echoey thing that we have going on here. And deliverability is important because emails need to land in the inbox. So I just reread that because I saw that like the duh part, and I remembered that I wrote that because my 8-year-old's in my head all the time. And your custom domain is yours and yours alone, and the shared domain is a safe place. So just keep that in mind that, the difference between the two, it can be great, but it's a matter of your preference and where your company is at that time.
Yeah. And then we also discussed warm-ups in a little bit more detail. Just know that they're necessary whenever you're trying to build a good reputation with ISPs. They are crucial. If you get anything out of today, know that warm-ups are crucial. They're so important to build that good reputation with ISPs.
Yeah. And the next thing is always monitor your email campaigns performance metrics, and also like filter that through the lens of your industry. So some of these metrics that we've given you today are very general. So, you might have something a little bit different for what you guys are used to for your industry. What you might have if you're selling clothing might be completely different than somebody selling, car parts, something that you might not buy as frequently. So just keep that in mind, but, keep an eye on those metrics. And when you start seeing any changes, that's a good time to revisit and revamp.
Yeah. And then lastly, talking about best practices, green flags, red flags, whenever it comes to deliverability, just make sure to continue using those. And I'm sure that we will definitely have some questions in the chat when it comes to best practices, especially in regards to deliverability.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was super informative, and I'm pretty sure it will be useful to our audience. Thank you, Sadie. Thank you, Heather, for sharing all of your thoughts, sharing your tips today with us. Let's move on to the Q&A and answer a couple of questions while we still have time. So the first question I would like to, read out loud to you. If you already done some damage to your domain, what would you suggest? Restart, start things over, or there's still a chance to kind of like get that redemption to revive your domain?
Yeah, I'll kind of start out and then I'll let Heather add anything if she has. So as I was saying earlier, it's really good practice, especially, if you have a consistent cadence to send to all your contacts, but also send to your most active contacts. Using that most active contact segment is definitely going to be crucial in trying to build up that deliverability. Again, it's about balance. We want to make sure that we're contacting all of our subscribers, but we also want to make sure that we're paying good attention to those most active. ISPs look at your engagement. How engaged are their customers with your email campaigns? And then based on that, if they are engaged, then that boosts your deliverability. So yeah, I would say do that first. See if you can increase your deliverability that way. And then if you're not having any luck, I wouldn't say warm up is starting over. I would say that warm up is just helping you improve, again, your deliverability.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in warming up it doesn't have to be this extensive thing that takes forever. Depending on your list size, you might even be talking just 2 days of work, 2 days of sending in a very different fashion to get your list to where you would like it to be performing at. If you have a very, very large list, then we're talking maybe up to a week of sending a little bit differently. But it's not, it doesn't have to be a big disruptor in your natural flow of how you send your email marketing out.
Yeah, agree.
All right, so talking about the warm-up, we have another question. How would you create a warm-up plan if you don't have 20K contacts? So a very small audience.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, sir. We're really nerds. We're just so nerdy and passionate. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I mean, if you had under 20K and you were still interested in doing one, the best way in Omnisend, the fastest way that we do it is we export the list, and then we use an Excel spreadsheet to pull apart that list into smaller segments. So it depends on, again, it's a little bit specific to each group that we work with, but a good base would be, starting with, it depends. I mean, we even get down into like the nitty gritty where it's like custom domain versus shared domain warm up plans, right? But a good safe place would be, starting at like 100 contacts or even 1,000 contacts as your first email out of Omnisend. So if you have under 20,000 and you want to rewarm it up, just start with sending 1,000 contacts, your best contacts, like reorganize, use the data that downloaded. You're going to have, things like, sales and metrics on clicks and things to your advantage. Use that data to reorganize your list based off of engagement. Opt-in dates are really good to use. Basically, you're looking for people that have done something very recently, and those are your highest probability of engaging with you. And you want those to be weighted at the top of your warm-up plan if you're creating it from scratch yourself. So those ones are going to be the first 1,000, and then double that for your next email that you send out. So 2,000, then 4,000, and so on. So that would be a very basic, easy way for you to tackle getting through just 20,000 contacts. So there's a couple different ways you can do a warm-up plan, but I think that would be, a very easy, quick way to do one. Sadie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. Definitely start out with your most active. If you've been using Omnisend for a little while, you'll definitely have the data, and you might even just want to create a segment of your most active contacts and use that. And then, you use your most active contacts when you're starting sending. And then if you have contacts that you're very unsure about, sometimes instead of sending solely to them, you can stack your contacts. So stack that engaged list with the maybe not so engaged list whenever you're doing a warm up, just so that way that engagement still looks great. But yeah, again, we could go on for days.
Yeah. I think the important thing is just to remember that, think of it as like a snowball. And as long as you start with a really tiny snowball and you're rolling that list size, that is a warm-up plan. However you create those lists, you just want to grow that over time. And it doesn't matter if they're overlapping contacts, because maybe you have different emails that need to go out each day of this warm-up plan, and you want to build upon the last list. You can do that too. Just remember, tiny snowball, grow it in size.
Yep.
All right. We have not that much time left, but there are a couple of more questions that I really would like to, read out loud and hear your opinion. So, first of all, so is the deliverability affected by email content? We have a customer here who recently been designing a lot of emails in Figma and have been cutting them into pieces and sending it mainly as a stitched together image. So does it affect your deliverability, or is it fine?
Yeah, so I think this is where we get into arguments. It depends on who you talk to. I would say with many of my clients, a lot of them do use just image-based emails. You want to make sure that you're compliant with ADA compliance, and maybe having a text behind those images just in case images do not show for some reason. But in my experience, it's truly understanding your audience and what they want to see from you. I have seen all image-based emails do fantastic in regards to opens, clicks, and sales. And I have seen text-based emails that looks like literally your grandma emailed you do great in clicks, opens, and sales. So really it comes down to understanding your audience and what they are, what they're most drawn to.
Yeah,
Heather, anything
definitely.
to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, if you're getting stellar engagement, you can throw the book out the window,
Yeah.
But if you're looking to improve some things, especially if you have like a lot of Outlook customers, they use Outlook for their email.
Yeah.
There always is issues with images of Outlook. Outlook is so weird when it comes to rendering emails. So definitely check out who's on your list and kind of judge it based off of that.
Yeah. And then one more thing to add, use Omnisend's A/B testing functionality. See what is getting more engagement with your emails. Is it more image based? Is it image heavy, or is it more text based? And use that, send that to your audience, and see which one gets the most engagement. Something that I do say with my clients though is just know what you're testing. It could be really easy and really fun to just kind of throw things out there when you're A/B testing, but know what you want to know what you want to see at the end, and make sure you actually come up with a conclusion to your hypothesis whenever you're doing A/B testing.
All right. So one more question, and it's about Gmail. And I think you could, talk a lot about that because it's all comes down to, those best practices for your deliverability. But the question is, how can you get Gmail to not, send those emails to the promotions tab? So they go directly in the inbox. And
okay.
Yeah.
So this is where we get really nerdy and passionate. So just know that the promotions folder is not hell. It's not the spam folder. The promotions folder was built and designed to be a folder for promotions. So I know in my experience, if I get a promotions email in my main inbox, I'm dragging that promotional email to my promotions folder because that's where promotions go. So it's not a bad place. It's a great place. And again, whenever we're talking about Gmail, they wanted to have a better experience for their end users, their customers. And so they created the promotions folder. So it's easier for their customers to decipher between emails from their grandmother and then, Target and all of these other promotional emails that are being sent in their inbox. So it's supposed to be for better usage. It's supposed to be a better user experience. So again, the promotions folder is not a bad place to be. Heather, anything to add?
No, that is exactly what I would have said. So game on. Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And
great. Yeah. Sorry. Anything else?
Sorry. I was about to say too, there's really, you might notice that some of these promotional emails are in your inbox. And it could be, again, Gmail's algorithm, they notice that you are a lot more engaged with this specific email. So maybe they'll start sending it into your primary inbox. But there is no formula. There's no perfect formula to get into that primary inbox. So just note that as well.
Great. You know what? One last thing, one last question. And it's not like it's a question, but I think your answer is going to be very short because, well, so let me just say read the question first. I constantly get between 48 to 50% open rate, but click rate is between 4 to 11%. Is this bad, average, or good? Me knowing something, I would say that those are perfect numbers. Like maybe not the most perfect, but those are amazing.
Amazing.
Numbers.
Yeah, I would say that is great click rates.
11%.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Great job. Your audience.
Hard to, that is great. But if you feel like that's bad, but it's not, like I would give yourself a pat on the back, go make a cup of coffee, take a break, go find something else to do because you're done with that job, first of all. But if you really want to improve your click rates, maybe they're below 2%, but your open rates are that stellar, right? Your open rates are great. That's an indication that people are seeing your emails. They're just not clicking in it. So what can you add to the email that's going to make somebody want to click it? So this is where, when we talk about warm-up plans, that first email that you send out to build that first step in the door, to build that reputation, or in this case, trying to build up more engagement, pick something that look at your best 10 performing emails and find out, why did people click that one? What is it about that email that people got super jazzed about? Was it because I put a video in it and people just can't help but press that play button, right? Is it because my image was so goofy and off brand that it worked for whatever reason that time? So try to look back through what worked and then compare to what didn't. But for detail, you're fine. You're fine. You're great. Go set up a new automation. You've got other things to focus on. Your campaigns are doing great.
All right. I think it's a great time to wrap it up. I know there are more questions that could be, answered out loud, but we have Ira, who was working behind the scenes, answering those questions in written in the chat and in the Q&A. So I think mostly all of them were answered, but don't you worry if your question wasn't answered, or you maybe didn't notice that it was answered. You will be able to find all the answers in the Q&A one-pager that we are going to send out with the recording. And yeah, just reminding you once again, this workshop was recorded, and you will receive that recording in a couple of days to your email inbox. With all the useful resources added to that email and the Q&A one-pager. I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating today, for listening to us. I think it was great. Heather and Sadie shared a lot, so I'm pretty sure your deliverability should be much better, right? Like from this moment. Yeah. I think, Heather, Sadie, do you want to just, say goodbye or add anything else before we end this workshop?
Just thank you for inviting us. So I had a great time. It's always a good time talking with you, Kate and Sadie. Thanks for thinking of us today.
Yeah, I agree. Had super fun. Again, apologize if we got a little bit too passionate. Again, we're super nerdy when it comes to this. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Please don't forget about the survey after the workshop. We would really appreciate it if you could just let us know how we are doing and what would you like to see or hear more. And I hope everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.